Ladies and gentlemen, you ever feel like you're alone? Like the world is moving forward and you're just standing still? You look around and it seems like everyone else has it figured out. Relationships, careers, success. While you're stuck, isolated, and wondering if something's wrong with you. But if I told you this is exactly where you're meant to be? What if this moment of solitude isn't punishment, but preparation? See, we've been conditioned to believe that being alone is a bad thing, that if you're not constantly surrounded by people, noise, validation, that something is missing. But let me tell you the truth. God damns you to be alone. Not forever, but for a reason. Because in solitude, you meet the real you. The version of yourself without the masks, without the distractions, without the need to impress anyone. And guess what? That's where power is born. Think about it. Every great leader, every powerful soul, every world changer has had a season of isolation. Jesus went to the wilderness. Moses spent years in exile. Buddha sat under a tree alone until he found enlightenment. Even the greatest athletes, the greatest minds, the greatest warriors. Do you think they built their strength in crowds? No, they trained in silence. They built their power in solitude. And right now, that's exactly what's happening for you. This isn't loneliness. This is your training ground. See, when you're alone, you start to hear. You hear your own thoughts, your own dreams, your own calling, and more importantly, you hear God. Not the noise of the world, not the opinions of others, but the voice that's been trying to reach you all along. Because when you strip away the distractions, you realize something powerful. You are enough. You don't need validation. You don't need permission. Everything you need is already inside you, but you won't find it in the crowd. You'll find it when you embrace the silence. So if you feel like you're alone right now, don't fight it. Lean into it. This is your season to grow, to become stronger, to prepare for what's coming next. Because when the time is right, when you've done the inner work, when you've built that unshakable foundation, God will open the doors, the right people will come, the right opportunities will show up, but you will be different. You will be ready. So don't rush it, don't resist it, embrace it, because when God pulls you away from the crowd, it's not rejection, it's redirection. It's preparation, it's transformation. And when you come out of this, you won't just be the same person with new blessings. You'll be a new person, period. So stand tall, own this season, walk through the fire, because you're not alone. You're in the process of becoming something unstoppable. And when that happens, the world better be ready, because nothing will be able to stop you. Now go, rise. Step into your power and trust that God knows exactly what he's doing. Solitude is one of the most powerful yet misunderstood experiences in life. When we find ourselves alone, we often feel abandoned, rejected, or forgotten. But what if solitude is not a punishment, but a divine calling? What if being alone is exactly where God wants you to be so he can shape you into the person he created you to become? Being alone is not the same as being lonely. Loneliness is a state of mind, but solitude is a state of growth. When God removes people from your life or separates you from the distractions of the world, he is creating an opportunity for you to connect with him in a deeper way. It is in the quiet, in the stillness, in the absence of noise that we begin to hear his voice more clearly. Too often, we seek validation from others, looking for love, approval, and purpose in relationships, social circles, and external achievements. But God knows that true fulfillment can never come from outside sources. It must come from within, and that requires time alone. Think of the most powerful figures in history, prophets, leaders, world changers. They all had seasons of solitude. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before stepping into his ministry. Moses spent years in exile before leading his people. David was alone in the fields as a shepherd before he became a king. These moments of isolation were not meant to break them. They were designed to build them. God used their solitude to strengthen their faith, to refine their character, and to prepare them for their calling. The same is happening in your life right now. When you are alone, you begin to see yourself clearly. Without the distractions of others, you come face to face with your fears, your doubts, your weaknesses, but also your strengths, right? This is where transformation happens. God wants you to be alone so that he can remove the things that no longer serve you, the negative beliefs, the toxic relationships, the limiting mindsets. He is stripping away the layers of who you thought you were, so he can reveal the powerful, purpose-driven person you truly are. In solitude, you also learn self-reliance. Not the kind that makes you push God away, but the kind that helps you trust him more. When there's no one else to lean on, you learn to lean on him. When there's no one to talk to, you start talking to him. And in those moments, you realize that God has been there all along, waiting for you to seek him fully. This is where faith is strengthened, not in the crowds, not in the chaos, but in the quiet. Many people fear being alone because they associate it with emptiness. But solitude is not emptiness. It is space. Space for God to move in your life. Space for clarity, for healing, for revelation. It is in solitude that your purpose is revealed, that your next steps become clear. When you are constantly surrounded by others, their voices drown out your own. But when you are alone, you finally hear what has been there all along, the divine calling on your life, the whispers of your soul, the direction you've been seeking. God wants you to be alone because he is preparing you. He is strengthening you for what's coming next. You may not see it yet, but trust that this season of solitude has a purpose. It is not a delay. It is not a setback. It is preparation. When the time is right, when you have fully embraced your growth, when you have found peace in the silence, he will open the doors. He will take some time. The right people will come. The right opportunities will align, and you will step into your destiny with the strength you never knew you had. So don't resist solitude. Don't see it as a burden. See it as a gift, a divine invitation to become the person you were always meant to be. God is not punishing you. He is positioning you. Trust the process, embrace the silence, and know that you are never truly alone. He is with you, shaping you, guiding you, preparing you for something greater. Purpose is one of the most important reasons why God wants you to be alone. When life is filled with distractions, constant noise, and the expectations of others, it becomes difficult to truly understand why you are here. Many people spend their entire lives chasing relationships, careers, and approval, hoping these things will give them meaning. But God knows that your true purpose cannot be found in the world. It must be discovered within yourself. And to do that, sometimes he has to pull you away from everything and everyone so that you can focus on the path he has designed specifically for you. When you are alone, you have the chance to reflect on your life without outside influence. You begin to question what really matters. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you truly desire? What is God calling you to do? These questions often go unanswered when you are constantly surrounded by others, because their opinions, their needs, and their presence can cloud your own vision. But when God separates you, when he strips away the distractions, it is so you can finally hear his voice and understand the purpose he has placed inside you. Throughout history, people who have walked in great purpose have had moments of isolation. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, spending years alone in a foreign land before stepping into his destiny as a ruler. Jonah was swallowed by a great fish and left alone in the depths of the sea before he finally understood his mission. Even Jesus spent time in solitude before stepping into his ministry. These moments of separation were not punishments. They were periods of preparation. God was refining them, teaching them, and strengthening them for the purpose that lay ahead. Many people avoid being alone because they fear uncertainty. They want immediate answers, quick results, and visible signs of progress. But purpose is not something that is revealed overnight. It requires patience, self-discovery, and trust in God's timing. When you are alone, it may feel like nothing is happening. But in reality, everything is happening. God is working in ways you cannot see, aligning opportunities, developing your character, and removing anything that could hinder your future. One of the biggest benefits of solitude is that it allows you to develop a deeper relationship with God. When you rely too much on people for guidance, you can easily miss what God is trying to tell you. But when you are alone, you have no choice but to seek him, to pray more, to listen more. And in those quiet moments, you will start to realize that God has been speaking to you all along. You just couldn't hear him over the noise of the world. Your purpose is unique. And because of that, not everyone will understand it. Sometimes God removes people from your life because they cannot go where he is taking you. The relationships you thought were essential may actually be distractions keeping you from fully stepping into your calling. When God isolates you, he is also protecting you. He is shielding you from influences that could derail you, and he is creating an environment where you can grow without interference. It is easy to question why you are alone, to wonder why certain friendships faded, why certain doors closed, why you feel disconnected from the world. But instead of seeing solitude as a loss, see it as an invitation. God is calling you into a deeper understanding of who you are and why you were created. He is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. And when the time is right, when you have learned what you need to learn, he will open the right doors, bring the right people, and reveal the next step. So embrace this season, use it wisely, seek clarity, strengthen your faith, and trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. God wants you to be alone right now because he is shaping you for something extraordinary. Stay patient, stay faithful, and know that your purpose is closer than you think. Growth is one of the main reasons why God wants you to be alone. In solitude, you are given the space and opportunity to transform, to become stronger, wiser, and more in tune with who you are meant to be. Growth does not happen in comfort. It happens in the moments of struggle, in the times when you are forced to rely on yourself and on God. When you are constantly surrounded by people, distractions, and outside influences, it becomes difficult to truly understand yourself and what you need to become better. But when God pulls you away, when he allows a season of isolation, it is because he wants to develop you in ways that would not be possible in the midst of a crowd. Personal growth requires deep self-reflection. It is in solitude that you begin to see your strengths and weaknesses clearly. You start to recognize the patterns in your life, the habits that are holding you back, and the areas where you need to change. When you are always surrounded by others, it is easy to ignore your flaws or to distract yourself from the things that need attention. But when you are alone, there is no hiding. You're forced to face yourself, to confront the things that need to be healed, and to work on becoming the person God has called you to be. Spiritual growth is another important aspect of being alone. When you are constantly dependent on people for support, for validation, and for direction, you may overlook your connection with God. But when you find yourself in solitude, you are given the opportunity to strengthen your faith. You learn to rely on God in ways that you never did before. You start to seek him more deeply, to pray more sincerely, and to trust him with every part of your life. This is when your relationship with God becomes personal and unshakable. Instead of depending on the world for answers, you begin to look to him for guidance. Instead of seeking approval from others, you start seeking alignment with his will. Growth also requires breaking free from the past. Sometimes God wants you to be alone because he is preparing you for a new season. There are times when the people around you are connected to an old version of you, and in order for you to step into the next chapter of your life, you must first go through a season of isolation. God is not punishing you, he is positioning you. He is helping you let go of toxic relationships, negative habits, and limiting beliefs that no longer serve you. It may feel uncomfortable, even painful, but this process is necessary for you to grow into the person you are meant to be. And emotional growth happens in solitude as well. When you are alone, you develop resilience. You learn how to be strong on your own, how to handle challenges without relying on external validation, and how to be content in your own company. Many people fear being alone because they associate it with loneliness, but there is a difference between being lonely and being in a season of growth. Loneliness is a state of mind, but growth in solitude is a choice. It is choosing to use the time alone to become better, to reflect, to heal, and to prepare for what is coming next. God wants you to be alone because he is transforming you. He is strengthening your mind, your heart, and your spirit. He is building you into the person who will be ready for the blessings he has planned. This season of solitude is not forever. It is a temporary but crucial part of your journey. When the time is right, when you have grown in the ways you need to, he will bring the right people, the right opportunities, and the right circumstances into your life. But first, you must embrace this time of transformation. Trust the process, trust the growth, and trust that God knows exactly what he is doing. Faith is one of the biggest reasons why God wants you to be alone. God is the second way you can see God on your deathbed. But it's not the first way you could see God in nothing. When life is filled with people, distractions, and constant noise, it is easy to rely on external sources for comfort, guidance, and direction. But faith is not built in times of ease. It is built in seasons of solitude. When God removes people from your life or separates you from the world, he is giving you an opportunity to develop true, unshakable faith. Not in people, not in circumstances, but in him. Being alone can feel uncomfortable, even painful. It can feel like abandonment or rejection. But in reality, it is often God's way of drawing you closer to him. When you have no one else to turn to, you are forced to turn to God. When the voices of the world are silenced, his voice becomes clearer. It is in these moments that faith is tested, and you begin to trust not because you can see the outcome, but because you believe that God is working behind the scenes, even when nothing seems to be happening. Faith is not about certainty, it is about trust. And trust is developed in seasons of solitude. Think about the great figures in history who had to walk alone in faith. Abraham had to leave his home and travel to an unknown land, trusting that God would guide him. Joseph was betrayed and thrown into prison, yet he held on to his faith, knowing that God had a greater plan. Even Jesus spent time alone in the wilderness, fasting and praying before stepping into his mission. These moments of isolation were not punishments, they were preparation. God was strengthening them, refining them, and teaching them to rely completely on him. When you are alone, your faith is put to the test. It is easy to believe when everything is going well, when you have support, when life is smooth, but real faith is built in the waiting, in the silence, in the moments when you feel forgotten, but still choose to believe. God allows these seasons because he wants you to develop a faith that is not dependent on circumstances. He wants you to trust him even when you don't have all the answers. Solitude also deepens your spiritual connection. When you are constantly surrounded by others, their opinions, fears, and doubts can influence your own beliefs. But when you are alone, you have the opportunity to seek God without distraction. You can pray with full focus, listen with an open heart, and grow in your understanding of his plans for you. This is where your faith becomes personal, not something you inherited from others or practiced out of habit, but something that is deeply rooted in your own experience with God. Faith in solitude teaches patience. In a world that thrives on instant gratification, waiting on God's timing can feel frustrating. But faith requires patience. It requires trusting that even when you don't see progress, God is still working. When you are alone, you learn to be still, to let go of control, and to surrender your plans to him. This is where faith transforms from something you talk about to something you truly live. God wants you to be alone so you can build the kind of faith that can withstand anything. He is removing distractions so you can focus on him. He is teaching you to trust even when you don't understand. He is guiding you to a place where your faith is not based on what you see, but on who he is. This season of solitude is not about being forgotten. It is about being prepared. When the time is right, when your faith has grown, he will open the doors, bring the right people, and reveal the next step. But first, he wants you to trust him completely. Faith is not built in the crowd, it is built in the quiet. And in this quiet, God is making you stronger than ever before. Transformation is one of the most powerful reasons why God wants you to be alone. When God separates you from others, it is not to punish you, but to change you. True transformation does not happen in comfort, and it does not happen when you are constantly surrounded by people who keep you the same. Instead, it happens in solitude, in the quiet moments where you are forced to reflect, to heal, and to grow. When you are alone, God is stripping away the old version of you, removing the things that no longer serve you, and shaping you into the person he created you to be. Many people resist solitude because they fear change. They want to stay in familiar places, surrounded by familiar faces, even if those environments are not helping them grow. But God knows that transformation requires separation. Sometimes he has to pull you away from certain relationships, certain habits, and certain mindsets so that you can step into the next level of your life. The person you were in the past cannot step into the future that God has for you. That is why transformation is necessary. In solitude, you begin to see yourself clearly. Without the influence of others, you can identify what needs to change. Maybe it is your way of thinking, your fears, your insecurities, or the limiting beliefs that have held you back. When you're always surrounded by people, it is easy to ignore these things. But when you are alone, you are forced to confront them. God wants you to deal with these areas not to break you, but to build you. He wants you to release the pain, the doubts, and the negative cycles that have been keeping you stuck. This is a process, and it is not always easy, but it is necessary for you to step into the person you were meant to become. Transformation also happens spiritually. When you are alone, your relationship with God deepens. Without the distractions of the world, you are able to seek Him more, to pray more, and to listen more. It is in these moments that He reveals things to you, things about yourself, about your purpose, about your future. The greatest spiritual transformations in history happened in solitude. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before beginning his ministry. Paul was alone for years after his conversion before he started preaching. Moses spent time in the desert before leading his people. In each case, solitude was the birthplace of transformation. Your mindset also shifts in solitude. When you spend time alone, you start to develop strength and resilience. You realize that you are capable of standing on your own, that your worth is not defined by others, and that your happiness does not depend on external validation. Many people fear being alone because they think it means they are weak or unwanted. But in reality, it is an opportunity to become the strongest version of yourself. The ability to be alone and still feel complete is a sign of true transformation. Emotional transformation also happens when you are alone. You heal. You let go of past pain, past relationships, and past disappointments. God allows solitude so that you can process your emotions without distractions, so you can forgive, release, and move forward without carrying unnecessary burdens. This healing is essential for what is coming next. You cannot fully embrace the future if you are still holding onto the past. God wants you to be alone because He is preparing you for something greater. He is shaping you into the person you need to be for the next chapter of your life. Transformation takes time and it often requires solitude. But when the process is complete, you will emerge stronger, wiser, and ready for the opportunities and blessings that are ahead. This season of being alone is not the end. It is the beginning of something extraordinary. Trust the transformation, embrace the process, and know that God is leading you to something greater than you could ever imagine.